It's like a beautiful name, Isis.
Ellen's rough. That's
Ellen is like an old.
But it's a rough one now.
It's a rough one now because she was running Abu Ghraib in the back of her show. That's a rough one. She's out there dancing with Kristen Bell, and in the back, there's people that are getting up on the rack like this.
And all these staffers started to come out, not for nothing, but I know a guy, I know him very well, whose sister worked for her, who said, you were not allowed to make eye contact with Ellen in the halls of that show. If you saw her, this is not a nice...
Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly just joined forces and the takedown. Brutal. So brutal, in fact, that Ellen DeGeneres might actually moonwalk off the internet this time. Forget the quirky dance moves and those feel-good giveaways. This is the real Ellen, the one Hollywood hoped you'd never meet. We're talking behind-the-scenes drama, whispered secrets, and enough shade to block out the California sun. The FOD is crumbling, louder than Rogan's legendary laugh. And what's being uncovered is juicier than a TMZ exclusive. If you ever thought daytime TV was all smiles and sunshine, buckle up. What just came to light is wilder than Ellen's wig collection caught in a Category 5 storm.
For you on this. This is perfect for you. Because I'm seeing this week that there is an attempted comeback by somebody who did not cross one of those fateful lines of the misstepping on their sacred cows of gender or race or sexuality.
Yeah.
But she was said to be a nasty, and that's Ellen DeGeneres.
Yeah.
So her show got canceled after she had this testy exchange with Dakota Johnson, where something happened where Dakota said, oh, I had this birthday party, and Ellen said, well, why didn't you invite me? You didn't invite me. And she said, like, no, I did invite you, Ellen. That's not what happened. And Ellen had blown her off. And then tried to play the victim on the set with her. Anyway, it led to article after article of people being like, Ellen's a bitch. Ellen is a nasty.
When Joe Rogan sets his sights on someone, subtlety isn't on the menu. It's loud, raw, and hits like a gorilla wielding a megaphone at a meditation retreat. So when he turned that unfiltered firepower on Ellen DeGeneres, the internet, collectively, clutched its pearls. You know that rare kind of online gasp? The kind usually reserved for when a celebrity gets caught doing something shocking that isn't rehab-related. But this wasn't your usual Rogan ramble about conspiracy theories or the benefits of elk meat. No, this was Joe in demolition mode, taking a verbal sledgehammer to yet another glittery Hollywood FOD. And this time, the cracks are impossible to ignore.
Progress with the strike.
They're picketing right now, so I think it's the early stages. I would think it might take a little bit with this one.
When someone crosses the writer strike, that's some dirty shit. They cross the picket line.
Yeah, I haven't seen anybody doing that yet.
I think Ellen did. I had a buddy of mine who was writing on Ellen. Everybody kind of knows now what she's really all about. And that's another one of those. Like, I'm so nice and I'm so sweet. Being behind.
Before we dive deeper, if you're enjoying this breakdown, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because this takedown, it's nothing short of legendary. This time, the spotlight's on the house of DeGeneres. And let's just say, it wasn't exactly built to withstand a shake-up like Joe Rogan. Ellen crafted an empire out of quirky dance moves, exaggerated laughter, and a persona so sugary it could put Splenda into therapy. But Joe? He's not buying the hype. To him, that carefully polished image was about as authentic as a reality show romance rehearsed, staged, and crumbling under scrutiny. The giggles? Forced. The applause? Like a cult in choreographed sync, trained better than airport sniffer dogs. And that long-pedaled narrative painting Ellen as a modern-day kindness guru. Joe took one look and tossed it in the compost bin of Hollywood illusions.
You see, like, a lot of people saying that someone who seems so nice is not nice at all.
She doesn't seem nice, but that people have a very poor judge of character. She doesn't seem nice. It seems forced. People that are like that all the time, she doesn't seem nice. It's very forced. And whatever, you're allowed to be a bitch, right? You're allowed to be a bitch. You're allowed to be nasty to people. You're accomplished. You're a comedian. You did the whole thing. What you're not allowed to do is have a Guantanamo Bay situation in the back.
Rogan didn't have to name names though. Of course, he totally did. But his real target wasn't just Ellen. It was something bigger. The glossy, well-oiled machine that elevates certain stars to untouchable status. You know the one, the endless parade of awards, soft focus interviews, and headline after headline praising revolutionary acts like hugging strangers or handing out toasters like confetti. But behind that sparkling stage presence, Joe pointed to something far less charming. Whispers of toxic workplace culture and mistreatment swirled louder than Ellen's most over-the-top dance number. And according to him, the only thing truly warm and welcoming backstage might have been the craft services table, assuming it wasn't giving outside eyes along with the snacks.
Situation. Yeah. You know, people found out that Ellen was mean, and all these people came out and said, Ellen's actually a bitch. And then we're like, oh, yeah. I can't believe it. And she lost everything. She fell apart, disappeared, because people found out that this character that she was portraying in a half an hour on a television show is not really who she was. My buddy Greg, who was one of her writers, was like, she's a piece of shit. And he was like, she's a...
Let's be real, Joe Rogan isn't exactly the poster boy for political correctness. In fact, he's more like the guy who shows up to a black tie event in Como and still manages to steal the spotlight. But that's exactly why his takedown of Ellen hit like a freight train. If even Joe Mr. Blunt Force Honesty himself thinks your squeaky clean persona is faker than a bachelor engagement ring, it might be time to kill the spotlight and do a little soul-searching. Rogan didn't just critique Ellen, he described her show as the Hollywood version of a haunted house, all smiles and sparkles on the outside, but behind the scenes, pure chaos and cobwebs of workplace horror. And in true Rogan fashion, he didn't stop there. Why call out one illusion when you can torch the whole circus tent? He let loose on the celebrity industrial complex, the par-fueled ecosystem that spins empty virtue into social currency. You know the game. Curated compassion, hashtag activism, and Halo handouts like it's a modern-day Oprah episode. You get moral superiority. You get applause for basic decency. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, it's a buffet of passive aggression, power trips, and toxic egos wrapped in pastel lighting. Joe's core argument? That the so-called high priestess of kindness may have been dishing out the emotional equivalent of cafeteria food, barely warm and questionably sincere. And just as the internet was starting to recover from Rogan's rhetorical demolition derby, in walked Megyn Kelly. No elk meat, no profanity, just a sharp blazer, a sharper Mick, and the surgical precision of someone who's dissected media spin for breakfast.
She eventually got canceled, but now she's coming back. She's got a Netflix special. That's the right response. Yeah. She's got a Netflix special. And here's the capper. On the promo, and apparently there's now articles out about from people who have seen the preview. She plays the victim. And she says, for me, and she actually has the nerve to say that she was run out of Hollywood. This person
she has with $100 million in her pocket.
$450 million, according to Forbes. That's a.
Unlike Joe Rogan, who stormed in like a Viking with a podcast mic and a grudge, Megyn Kelly took a far more surgical approach. Where Joe wielded a verbal sledgehammer, Megyn reached for the scalpel. Her takedown wasn't loud, it was lethal. In its precision, like a seasoned attorney dismantling a shaky alibi on the witness stand. She didn't just call out Ellen's alleged off-camera behavior, she put the entire celebrity praise machine on trial. That ecosystem of fawning headlines and breathless praise? According to Megyn, it was less journalism, more a well-rehearsed group hug fueled by PR fumes. While Joe cracked the glossy exterior, Megyn examined the rot underneath, picking apart the myth of Ellen not as a talk show host, but as a carefully engineered brand ambassador for sugar-coated, performative kindness. With a perfectly arched brow, Megyn described the show's set as less like a workplace and more like a pastel-colored hostage situation. Everyone smiling, everyone clapping, everyone too afraid to cough without written permission. The laughter, the applause, it all rang hollow under her analysis. And that grand apology tour Ellen took on? Megyn wasn't fooled. She painted it not as a genuine reckoning, but as a stiff, poorly written PR infomercial dressed up as redemption. Her delivery wasn't bombastic, but it didn't need to be. Every word cut deeper than a headline, questioning how someone with a trail of alleged toxicity could be elevated to moral sainthood. In Megyn's world, the halo was slipping and fast.
Yeah, she's a CIA agent. Stephen Paddock and do not ask me for sources, but Stephen Paddock,
Who's that?
he was the guy that shot up the Vegas concert. That was a very tragic thing. Listen to this. The only guy that saw Stephen Paddock alive, his name is Jesus Campos. He was a guard at Mandalay Bay. He got interviewed nowhere else. You know where he got interviewed in the beginning?
Ellen. Really?
Weird. And then they went on, if you could find that clip, they went on with a weird diagram of how it happened, and Ellen's showing the people how it happened. Not like an emotional, how are you feeling, how are you holding up? It was a weird diagram of and then he went to the left and to the right. It was very strange to, look, what the hell's going on? This is a daytime.
Megyn didn't just point the finger at Ellen, she practically subpoenaed the entire system that propped her up. Her spotlight wasn't limited to the on-screen queen of daytime dance breaks. It extended to the corporate fairy godmothers who dusted Ellen's image with glitter, magazine spreads, and enough puff pieces to make a publicist weep with joy. According to Megyn, the woman hailed as a beacon of kindness allegedly acted more like the snappy boss from a second-rate sitcom off-camera. The fairy wings came off fast, and that's where things got particularly juicy. Rogan's brand of critique is all grisly honesty, sweaty gym energy, and chaotic podcast tangents. Think campfire rants with protein powder. But Megyn, she brought courtroom cool. Her takedown felt like a white wine-fueled cross-examination under studio lights. She didn't throw haymakers, she laid elegant traps, one eyebrow raise at a time, slicing through Ellen's halo with surgical precision. What connected their two very different styles was one undeniable truth. The kingdom of Ellen, once portrayed as the gold standard of feel-good television, was full of fractures. More cracks than a Beverly Hills Botox convention. While Ellen tossed out gift cards like Oprah Light and danced across the stage in sneakers, backstage stories painted a much darker tale, a sparkly dictatorship with better lighting, and perhaps the most surreal part, Ellen said nothing. No notes app apology, no Instagram slideshow of sunrises and vague captions about growth, just silence, which in this case didn't read as grace under pressure. It felt more like someone slowly moonwalking away from a blazing dumpster, pretending not to smell the smoke while the flames lit up their carefully constructed brand.
They're gonna find the thing if you don't go away. You gotta have a good run, and then when you have a good run, you step back and you go, okay, I'm still gonna do my thing, but I'm not. I mean, there's only a few jobs in entertainment, right?
Right.
So I think a lot of the cancel culture shit is probably these motherfuckers want those jobs.
Ooh.
They're like, how long is this bitch gonna be dancing? I can dance with Hillary Clinton. I could do the Charleston with Henry Kissinger, whatever the fuck she does out there.
The Charleston, is that what it is?
She goes out there, do the Charleston. She's got war criminals. Her and Bush are jumping around. I mean,
That's right, she was buddies with Bush. That
yeah,
was one
she's
of the
a
first.
CIA.
What makes the Rogan and Kelly combo so unexpectedly satisfying is how they came at Ellen from completely different corners of the media universe and somehow landed on the exact same punchline. Joe came charging in like a wrecking ball at a lemonade stand, smashing through Ellen's carefully curated image with his trademark blend of blunt force honesty and unfiltered sarcasm. Meanwhile, Megyn moved through the wreckage like a museum docent with a laser pointer, calmly highlighting the inconsistencies in every brushstroke of Ellen's public persona. Joe laughed at the idea that Ellen was ever the Oprah of daytime TV, joking that her only life advice seemed to be how to fire people with a forced smile and a confetti cannon. Megyn, on the other hand, asked the bigger, colder question. How did a culture obsessed with accountability let the supposed queen of kindness glide by on a cloud of cardigan chic and dance montages? And here's where it got really awkward. No one pushed back. Hollywood, the same industry that once flooded Ellen with awards, honorary degrees, and flower arrangements the size of small cars, suddenly went radio silent. The celebs who once begged to sit on her couch now seemed to vanish into the mist. It was as if someone shouted awkward at a red carpet gala and the entire list suddenly remembered they left their oven on. Together, Rogan and Kelly peeled back Ellen's glitter-coated onion, and what they found underneath smelled a lot more like ego than empathy. For years, viewers were sold the image of America's goofy, lovable aunt. A little quirky, sure, but always kind-hearted. Turns out, if the whispers are true, she was more like the aunt who shows up to Thanksgiving tipsy, roasts everyone's life decisions, and steals the leftovers on her way out.
So now she's out there saying, I was run out of Hollywood. She's actually reportedly complaining about how hard it is for women in America with the double standards.
Look at Oprah, how hard it is for her.
Oh, she's got, like 10 houses, Ellen DeGeneres?
Michelle Obama, look how hard it is for women in America. They're hurting.
They're going to let her back in, Rob, because she's a lesbian, she's a leftist, and she didn't hit one of their sacred cows. Nastiness, that's their bread and butter.
And this wasn't just about Ellen being mean. Mean is manageable. Mean is your barista giving you side eye for ordering oat milk. This was deeper systemic toxicity wrapped in a bow of whimsical charm. It was fear-based leadership dressed up in pastel colors and quirky dance breaks. A brand so meticulously engineered it made IKEA instructions look like jazz improvisation. And somehow, it was all sold to the public as if it were hand-spun. Locally sourced kindness, harvested straight from Ellen's ever-smiling soul, Joe Rogan. And Megyn Kelly came along and bulldozed that illusion, one with jokes and fury, the other with shade and surgical precision. They never shared a room, never exchanged a smirk, but their critiques struck the same nerve. It was almost poetic. Two voices from wildly different galaxies in the media universe, both hell-bent on popping the pastel balloon floating above daytime TV's most protected personality. Rogan, all F-bombs and elk meat, built his brand on bro, logic and bombastic honesty. Kelly, armed with polished delivery and lawyerly control, sliced through narratives like red tape. On paper, they're opposites in every way. And yet, when it came to Ellen DeGeneres, they were strangely aligned like two judgmental horcruxes from alternate dimensions, drawn together by one shared truth. The Be Kind empire was cracking like cheap porcelain at a Hollywood Botox brunch. And while others stayed silent, tiptoeing around the stench of scandal, Rogan charged in with the subtlety of a sledgehammer dipped in sarcasm because, frankly, nuance isn't really his thing.
I'm just saying, like, of all people on earth to be feeling sorry for herself, Ellen DeGeneres should not be on the list.
She should at least, but make a real apology and do it.
There's no apology. It's just woe is me. I was run out of Hollywood as she speaks from this grandiose stage on Netflix. Hello, you haven't been canceled if you are doing a Netflix special. She got $20 million for the one before this.
He didn't just critique Ellen's bubbly persona, he called it out as so artificially sweet it made Barney the dinosaur seem emotionally nuanced. Joe Rogan questioned how someone who built a billion-dollar empire on hugs, quirky dance moves, and pastel perfection could also be the elusive wizard behind a curtain stitched together with workplace horror stories. And just to clarify, that curtain, it wasn't velvet. It was a patchwork of HR complaints stapled together with passive-aggressive memos and NDAs. While Rogan brought the chaos and comedy, Megyn Kelly arrived with cold, calculated precision. If Joe threw verbal punches in a barroom brawl, Megyn was the assassin in heels, silent, swift, and wielding receipts like throwing stars. She didn't just side-eye Ellen's image. She dismantled it like a bomb technician, carefully, methodically, and with undeniable accuracy. Joe joked that the only authentic thing on Ellen's set was the $40 mug. Megyn, meanwhile, pointed a spotlight at how media outlets cheered Ellen's kindness revolution, while conveniently ignoring the avalanche of employee testimonials piling up in the shadows. These weren't whispers traded in grocery store lines, these were full-on public statements, packed with stories of racism, intimidation, fear, and a work environment so emotionally chaotic, it made Black Mirror, Daytime Edition, sound plausible. One former staffer said they were told not to speak to Ellen, not in a respectful, she's prepping for taping kind of way, but more in a make eye contact and she might dissolve into dust kind of way.
Of your show where everybody's walking around afraid for their life, and it's like Abu Ghraib where they're hooked up to wires and they
Dogs
have like
around them.
Yeah, she's got dogs and hoods. If an intern's late, they have a hood on. I don't support that. That's just me.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah, I mean, I wish her the
she's done?
best. She's around for too long.
James
Fallon,
Corden.
all these people, walk away. You've been famous forever. Walk away. Like, eventually, everybody, they're just going to figure it out. Now, Fallon's on an apology.
The contrast is almost grotesque. Those polished video montages of Ellen DeGeneres tearfully handing out iPads, twirling with grandmas, and hugging teary-eyed fans under a shower of applause. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, whispers turned into headlines, assistants allegedly reduced to tears over chipped nail polish, reprimanded for offenses that wouldn't even register at a middle school talent show. And here's the kicker, Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly didn't coordinate a takedown. They didn't sit down over lattes to swap Ellen horror stories. They didn't need to. The absurdity of the situation practically narrated itself. One look behind the curtain, and the pastel illusion began unraveling like a knockoff designer bag under studio lights. Why does this matter? Because celebrity kindness has become the 21st century version of snake oil. We're being sold polished personas, wrapped in moral superiority, packaged like virtue-flavored candy bars, and the media plays pitchman like it's primetime QVC. Ellen wasn't just praised, she was worshipped. She collected Emmys and standing ovations like participation trophies. All while, reportedly, crew members were being fired for taking medical leave or speaking out of turn. When the scandal erupted, so did her ratings. Down the drain faster than one of her signature giveaways. Overnight, Ellen went from household icon to hushed warning. Celebrities stopped showing up. Brands quietly ghosted her like a toxic ex. Hollywood didn't cancel her, they just looked away and never looked back. Sure, some fans still defend her, clinging to nostalgic clips of surprise checks and "be kind" catchphrases, but it's like trying to hold onto a dream that fades the second you open your eyes. Warm and fuzzy at first, then confusing, awkward, and impossible to explain. Here's the uncomfortable truth: when both Joe Rogan offs commentating, elk meat devouring chaos agent, and Megyn Kelly, a media-hardened interrogator with courtroom comms, start pointing at the same person, it's a pretty good sign the PR fog machine has finally sputtered out. And once the smoke clears, all that's left is the exposed stage, the cooling spotlights, and whatever real truth remained after the last standing ovation. No dramatic face-off. No fiery rebuttal, just the eerie quiet of an empire quietly crumbling, documented from two opposing hills, both spotting the same flames from miles away. That's the poetic irony, because kindness isn't a costume. It doesn't come off with the mic pack and makeup. And when the mask slips, when both a blunt force podcaster and a meticulous journalist say the emperor has no pants, it's not just a bad look. It's the end of the illusion. What remains? A faded set, a retired slogan, and a brutally honest reminder: when your brand becomes louder than your behavior, even the brightest spotlight can't hide the shadows behind the scenes.